A warm welcome to our QTV Business and Economy program. The Business and Economy program is intended to promote the ideals of a corporate Gambia identity through partnership in consultation with public and private sector enterprises, civil society organizations, and the international community. In today's episode, we have invited a distinguished personality in the name of Mr. Aliu Bai Seka, the Chief Executive Officer at the Gambia Chamber of Commerce and Industry. I would now give a brief overview of the biography of Mr. Seka. Aliu Bai Seka is an accomplished corporate governance expert, industry leader, entrepreneur, and business practitioner. He has a proven track record in leadership and engagement with the government, business community, and several international agencies, and is familiar with the business environment, opportunities, and challenges. Mr. Seka trained in London and is a graduate of the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators and City College of Higher Education. He holds top British professional qualifications, including Fellowship of Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators, FCIS, is a Fellow of Chartered Management Institute, FCMI, a Fellow Member of Association of Accounting Technicians, and Hospitality General Management from the United States of America, Cornell University in particular. His work experience are in the areas of auditing and accountancy, hospitality, strategy, and corporate administration. He has championed momentous transformation in the private sector, prominent among them leadership and positive advocacy in the tourism industry. He is a former chairman of Gambia Hotel Association, National Enterprise Development Initiative, Africa Travel Association, Director of Labor Advisory Board, and Reliance Financial Services. Mr. Secretary, as I've said earlier, is currently the Chief Executive Officer of the Gambia Chamber of Commerce, Industry, Agriculture, and Employee Association. He is also a Board of Director of the Gambia Ports Authority, the Gambia Bureau of Statistics, Social Development Fund, Gambia Public Works Agency, and part of the Independent Complaints Review Board. Mr. Seka has received the following awards: Medal of the National Order of the Republic of the Gambia, RGM, Balafon Award of Excellence of the Africa Travel Magazine, an Outstanding Service Award from Africa Travel Association. Mr. Seka, quite an impressive dossier. I know I've not read half of it. You are welcome to the Business and Economy program. It is our pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and congratulations on the program.
Thank you. I know you are just returning from vacation, so you must be well rested, even though you arrived yesterday night.
Alhamdulillah. It's nice to be back too.
Viewers, today we have invited Mr. Seka as the CEO of the Gambia Chamber of Commerce and Industry. We have had 8 episodes so far, and we had discussed various issues relating to the business environment. And here is where we're going to cap it off, as long as the business environment is concerned, on the first serialization episodes. And it is our honor to have Mr. Seka in to help us in capping off our first set of serialization episodes. The Chamber of Commerce has been in existence since 1967, and it has seen itself transformed over the years. It has seen its mandate grow and expanded. I know the trade fair that we have that is so well appreciated and enjoyed by the citizenry is a new addition which has not been there in the previous years. So a lot has happened at the Chamber. Now, we also know that the Chamber, one of its primary mandate is to help in business development, trade facilitation, and most notably advocacy in terms of the business environment. By way of introduction, Mr. Seka, could you touch on those 3 mandates of the Chamber and give us an indication of what it is that the Chamber has managed over the years that you think is of relevance and that needs to be noted by the general public?
I think that's an interesting and a well-loaded question. The Gambia Chamber of Commerce, as you've rightly pointed out, in its current form started in 1967. It has transformed and metamorphosized substantially over the years to its current form. And of course, the key mandates are as you illustrated. And particularly, let's talk about advocacy. On a day-to-day basis, I tell my colleagues at the Chamber that we wake up every day to speak on behalf of the private sector, to ensure that we have an enabling environment, that the ground is leveled, as well as it's incentivized enough that local entrepreneurs as well as international businesses that want to come and do business in the Gambia find it interesting and viable to do. So we do this on a day-to-day basis, either through direct contacts that we have with the government, through bilateral and international agencies. And of course, engaging the government even more and more these days. With regards to trade facilitation, the Gambia Chamber of Commerce again has as one of its core mandate to ensure that trade, since the Gambian economy is mainly trade-based, is also expanded and continues to grow. In this regard, the Gambia Chamber of Commerce is a member of the Trade Facilitation Committee set up under the Ministry of Trade and chaired by the Gambia Revenue Authority, plus many other stakeholders. And here again, we ensure that all the enabling environment are assured to make sure that the businesses that are both in the Gambia, as well as those that come from the region and outside, have a thriving business. Our rules are not limited to this. On a day-to-day basis, we receive inquiries both locally as well as internationally for either environment in the Gambia, business environment in that regard, but also matchmaking and inquiries, references being sought on Gambian businesses, but also those opportunities that exist in the Gambia. So our roles really are multifaceted.
Yes, I actually realized that, and when I was going through the roles and responsibilities of the Chamber, at some point I said to myself, their mandate is quite loaded, and I look at the staff complement at the Chamber, and I said, the staff must be overly busy at the Chamber, given the multifaceted nature of what it is that you're supposed to, to achieve. But you made a very important point in terms of the Trade Facilitation Committee, which dovetails very well with your trade facilitation responsibilities. I, for one, have always been of the view that trade is an important aspect of the economy, given our sheer market size, 1.8 to 2 million people. And that if we're to develop as an economy, there is a dire need for us to have an outside market where businesses could actually, sell their products. And here I would make reference to the Manufacturing Association in the Gambia. We have seen in the past, especially during the previous regime in which I served, that trade has been a challenge given the issues with the border closures between Gambia and Senegal. Now, with trade being part of your mandate and you sitting at the Trade Facilitation Committee, and given the enhanced relationship, if you will, the cordial relationship that now exists between President Adama Barrow and President Macky Sall, border closures, are they a thing of the past? And what is it that the Chamber is looking at doing or is doing to help ensure that there is support for businesses in the Gambia that want to do border across, that do want to do business across the border to Senegal, that they're able to realize this?
Well, let's deal with the issue of, let me just refer you back to the issue of the staff complement. It's interesting, you know, that mandate is so widespread. yet we have a small team. But I'm very pleased to confirm that we have a team of dedicated professionals, and over the last few years have added more and more professionals to the team. So despite being lean, I like to think that we're efficient and are doing more and more in that regard. Now, coming back to the issue of the trade facilitation, we have signed a number of MOUs with the immediate neighbors, particularly chambers of commerce of both Ziguinchor as well as Kaolack Chamber of Commerce being the closest to our borders. And these are key players in the Senegalese economics. Because also, mind you, it's the same business that Senegal does with its neighboring countries, particularly Mali, where it does a lot of transit trade. The Gambia Chamber of Commerce actually runs what we call the Interstate Road Transit Scheme, ISRT, Interstate Road Transit, which is a protocol under ECOWAS, which facilitates trade and business between all ECOWAS countries. Similarly, we all compete for the same level of business and perhaps the same, should we say, traders in these ECOWAS countries. The Gambia has been known for its efficient administration of ports, as well as its simplified tax system. So we actually do a lot of interstate road transit, meaning that a lot of businesses in the region, particularly Senegal, both northern Senegal as well as southern Senegal, come to the Gambia, as well as from Guinea-Bissau, Guinea-Conakry, and Mali, notably, bring their goods and containers to the Gambia, process it efficiently and quickly within a day or two, and take it using this scheme onto their regions. So it's most important that we actually maintain and nurture the relations with our neighbors to ensure that it's facilitated. Of course, at the government level, there are bilateral and the ECOWAS protocols. But the fact is, you need to be in the best of relations, especially if you're surrounded by Senegal. Hence the reason why we feel very much that these MOUs are apparent and important. Now, of course, the fact that we compete with Senegal for traders from Mali, Guinea-Bissau, Guinea-Conakry to bring their goods to Gambia or Dakar and then to transit it, means that we have a common interest. And so they like to fight their own cause, so would we. Of course, there are also from time to time, should we say, subjective opinions that are formed, whether it's correct or not. That because of our lean system that we administer in the Gambia, that they lose in revenue in Senegal. So for that reason, they tend to, should I say, shake the glass from time to time to see if they can curtail or at least challenge prominence in this regard. But the fact that we have very good relations with Senegal today, we hope will be a thing of the past, that we should not have these border closures. But I should mention that recently an eminent issue is the cashew trade. Again, Senegal wants to promote the use of its port in Ziguinchor, and so wants to see that cashew is exported directly from Ziguinchor. But I have to tell you that the traders, both in the Gambia as well as from the region, would rather come to the Gambia, again using our efficient system and the administration that we have at the Gambia Chamber of Commerce as a trade facilitator. We issue also the certificate of origin, as well as having an office at the Gambia Ports Authority that we work with closely. So we're moving forward. There will be from time to time challenges, but the dialogue opens, and I think we can make progress.
Now, you mentioned the fact that there is seemingly competition, not seemingly actually, there is actual competition between the Gambia and Senegal in terms of the re-export trade. Now, in terms of the value ascribed to the re-export trade vis-a-vis the Gambia, we have seen it, drop over time. I know when I was at GAIPA, I used to say that the Senegalese come to the Gambia and understudy us, and we are to some extent complacent about this. And by the time they leave and go back, they have gathered so much information and knowledge to the point where they aggressively pursue strategies that makes us lose our competitiveness, our competitive edge in a way. Talking of which, I want to make reference to the re-export trade, if you will, from Dakar all the way to Bamako, in which you have special escorts that are provided by the Senegalese government, because this was one of the strategies that they adopted. And you know very well that the Gambia has this river that has not been exploited, which, if exploited, could actually help us in terms of either regaining our edge as long as the export trade is concerned. As the CEO of the Chamber of Commerce, and considering your advocacy role, is this an area that you feel the government at the level of policy needs to look into as a way of helping to rebuild the re-export trade of the country, especially if we take into consideration the fact that, you know, the river transport used to thrive very well in the Gambia under the Jawara regime?
Yes, you're right. Re-export has suffered, but I should also mention it has actually been replaced by interstate trade.
The ISRT
That's
protocol.
Right.
Okay.
So that has actually trebled over the last 4 years since the Gambia instituted it. So we've lost the re-export trade, and rightly, as you said, Senegal have been to the Gambia. The traders have always been coming to buy and go and sell. Those actually are re-export, because those would have been paid, customs paid in the Gambia. They come, go to the market, buy them at a cheap price, and take them to Senegal. Of course, Senegal in that regard had tried to deal with customs at its borders and often confiscate or stop and surcharge the traders. So that, to a large extent, has acted as a disincentive for a lot of these Senegalese that used to come. Notwithstanding, traders and businesses will always operate where they feel there's an opportunity. Every challenge comes as an opportunity as well. So they will continue to thrive and explore these. But the interstate, like I said, has trebled over the last 3 years or 4 years since it was introduced in the Gambia.
More than the value of what we've lost vis-a-vis re-exports?
Oh yes, definitely.
Okay.
And there are potentials to even grow much more as well. In this regard, it's most important that, again, the ECOWAS protocol that we've all signed should be respected by all parties. Again, because of competition, from time to time, we have queries here and there. But the fact that we now have constructive engagement and relations, I think, would help in that regard. Now, coming to the issue of the river transport, that is quite a pertinent one. However, the investment required for river transport is substantial. And again, the investment climate over the last few years was challenging, to say the least. So many actually had concerns in that regard. Moreover, I think the Gambia Ports Authority and the Gambia government have a role in this regard. So we are continuing to engage, and I recognize that now the Gambia government also sees river transport as well as tourism as priority areas that they want to work on. Because let's face it, also both Guinea-Bissau, Guinea-Conakry, and even Mali are even more accessible using the river transport all the way. But moreover, also we can also make savings and keep our roads much longer and durable, saving the cost of maintenance. So there are many reasons why we can actually grow river transport. Not to talk about employment in the communities that are on the river beds across all the way.
You mentioned the simplified tax system in existence in the country, and also the efficiency at the ports. Relatively, some people may question whether we have a simplified tax system or whether the efficiency at the ports is at the level that it needs to be. While not getting into those specifics, what I want to ask is, I mean, you are aware of the recent pledge, the donor round table that was led by H.E. Adama Barrow in Brussels. Were you there? I want to believe you were there as well.
No, I wasn't. I was actually on vacation.
Oh, you were on vacation.
Yes, it so happened that I was away.
But the president was there.
President Jagana
was there.
Yes.
Now, 1.45 billion euros is quite a lot of commitment at the level of the EU. Contrary to what most think, these are pledges, but it's a false start, and depending on what we do as a country, all of it could crystallize. But what I want to ask is, since you mentioned the ports, do you reckon there's an envelope there for the ports that they could use to help further enhance the efficiency at the ports? Because this is one area, and I make note of this point because of the frequent congestion we have at the ports. Congestion could be as a result of too much business coming through.
That is a fact.
Exactly, and you needing to expand. So is there an envelope within? Do you know, as the CEO of the Chamber of Commerce, whether there's an envelope? And if there isn't an envelope, should a case be made generally in terms of port expansion, given the growth that we are seeing in their level of business?
Yes, I can confirm, both as CEO of the Chamber of Commerce as well as a board member of the Gambia Ports Authority, that the port expansion project is a key priority project for the government of the Gambia. As a matter of fact, the government of the Gambia has been pushing for us, for the board, to consider and adopt proposals that are on the table. We are going through due process at the moment, so I can confirm that that is certainly key. Whether it's within the EU budget or the NDP, particularly the 1.4 billion that has been pledged recently, it is the current, or the one that we're looking at, is not part of that. It's actually on a standalone. However, there is a substantial infrastructure component of the National Development Plan. About $500 million is actually earmarked for infrastructure development. And this includes road infrastructure and a lot of also things that will make a difference to the livelihood and the comfort of the general citizenry. So the ports will continue to be, because let's face it, it is one of the biggest, should we say, institutions in the Gambia. Its turnover is $1 billion per annum. It employs over 500 employees every year. Its contribution to GDP as well as the national economy is substantial. So this really can make a difference to our economy, particularly to the city of Banjul, since the port is located there. Let's go back to the issue of the tax that you also talked about. The business community certainly feels that we still can do a lot more with regard to taxation. We're still hovering between 27 and 30% corporate tax and personal income tax. We commend the government, the new government, in that they have come down since the last few years. But that still is not enough. I think ideally we should look at corporate and personal income tax of about 20%. That will make us a lot more competitive, not only in the region, but I think also if we yearn for the Singapore of West Africa that the previous government had talked about, which I also believe this new government wants to see in its national development plan.
The Jawara government as well?
Likewise. So really, there is no reason why we cannot reduce taxation. Because after all, a lot more companies will come to the Gambia, as has been proven all over the world, where you have lower taxes, foreign direct investment is a lot bigger, employment is created, businesses will grow, factories will come, and everybody sees the benefit. After all, the tax that is saved is in the pocket of the citizenry, so they're able to spend and stimulate the local economy. So we can continue to do some more work in that regard. But with regards to the ports simplified system that we have, again, we had lost some of that competitiveness over the years. But I can also assure you that it is now urgent with the new board at the ports, as well as the new management and the government of the Gambia. So we're looking at how to ensure that we return to those level of efficiencies that we've had in the Gambia for many years. So whilst we may not be the most competitive, I can assure you we're still relatively competitive.
Yes.
And Mali, Guinea-Bissau, Guinea-Conakry, and Senegalese, you'll be surprised. I should mention, about half of the interstate road transit is actually for Senegal, when despite having Dubai Port running its own port, half of the interstate that we do is actually for Senegal. So just imagine if we become a lot more efficient.
Yeah, well, Dubai Port World might be trying to regain on their investment, given the fact that I believe the PPP agreement was for a tenure of 25 years. So time is encroaching on them. So hopefully that might be the reason why things are now coming through Gambia for it to be
possibly
transmitted, via
possibly,
the
but I also
protocol.
want to believe that,
which is good for us anyway.
No, but I can also confirm that a lot of the businesses that come to the chamber tell us because it's much more efficient and quicker to process their goods through here. So it's a combination of factors, but I still believe we're relatively competitive.
Well, the more efficiency we are at the ports, the better for us. Because
Indeed.
At the end of the day, it would help us as an economy to move forward. Let me just turn attention a little bit. And here I would want to talk about the Global Competitiveness Index ranking of the Gambia, where, access to finance is tipped as one of the most challenging issues for private enterprise. I know access to finance is also one of your key, one of the areas that you have earmarked as an area that you have to look at to help to help private businesses address, and I would say that, it is plausible that you do that, given the fact that, you are the Chamber of Commerce and the voice of business. But I want to take it a step further. And looking at the ranking of the Gambia in the past years, 123rd out of 138 nations, not quite an impressive ranking. But if you look at the progress that has been managed over the years, it's been good. I know when H.E. Barrow was at the UNGA, this was one of the issues that he pinpointed at the last UNGA, where he said the country has actually moved from 123rd to 117. And I was quite impressed that His Excellency, I don't know whether the chamber had a role in him pointing that out. But the fact that he, as a head of state, would discuss this as part of his delivery at the UNGA, to me was significant, because it shows that, he pays attention to what is happening in the economy. But as Chamber of Commerce, does that present an opportunity for you to actually drive some points in terms of your mandate and your aspirations? Because access to finance is a challenge that most businesses, cry in this country.
That is a fact. Coincidentally, I've just returned from a Brussels European Union conference on jobs and growth in West Africa. So access to finance is not limited to the Gambia. However, it's the biggest constraint that businesses face in almost all developing countries. In the Gambia, this was compounded because of our high public debts, which meant that the private sector was crowded out of finance that would have been available to the private sector through the commercial bank and operations. We're pleased to know that this has started to come down to make it more competitive and affordable so that the businesses can access this. But I think there are many other factors that we have to look at. And of course, the issue of the taxation, I can guarantee you, and the reason why the developed countries mainly have lower taxes is to incentivize the businesses so that they operate locally. And recently I just saw a video which talked about the huge potentials of reducing taxes to ensure that the big businesses are able to relocate to Africa.
Is that with the U.S. Senator?
That is right. I think that was a lesson that all African governments should learn. And I hope you will have an opportunity to also play it on your TV program. Because really, we could make a huge difference only by just shifting where income and where the variables that drive our economies come from. So that will continue to be an issue unless we get our environment, our business environment right. But also the fact is the cost of borrowing is high because our banking sector is structured in such a way that they are commercial based or they are trading based. They look at short-term lending mainly. We don't have an investment bank, we do not have an agricultural bank, etc. So it means that all these money that could have been used to invest and plow to help the businesses and entrepreneurs grow are only available for short term, maybe at most 3 years. Let's face it, who can pay interest of 25 to 30% as well as be able to reinvest in their businesses? So I think we all have a common interest, both government as well as the private sector, to ensure that we're able to bring these rates down so that at the end of the day, everybody can have access, and affordable access for that matter.
I had the CEO of Standard Chartered Bank and the Executive Secretary of the Bankers Association on this same forum some 2 weeks back. And one of the issues that was discussed is the very issue that I've alluded to here, but we spoke about it in terms of the predictability of the business environment and how even though the Treasury bill rates have crashed, which government had decided to bring down because of the very same problem that you alluded to in terms of the crowding out of the private sector and the debt burden that it has, created for us, over the years. And they were quite optimistic in terms of how the banking space is going to change, even though I had asked, with the excess liquidity that you find yourself sitting on, what is it that you're going to do in terms of helping businesses that are in so much need of, financing, in order for us, for the business environment, to grow. And one of the points that was, that I made, which I, put to them was, Treasury bill rates are now single digits, but then we have not seen a commensurate tracking, if you will, in terms of lending rates. And I was told that, well, it takes a while for the lending rate to track, the policy rate. And reason being that, the commitments that have been made, have to pretty much run their tenor, before interest rates come down. But I think this might be an opportunity because, as the Executive Secretary of the Banking Association, as the Managing Director of one of the, leading banks in the economy, they were optimistic that things are going to improve for the better. So maybe that is an area that you, as the voice of business,
well, I also represent the banking sector, so I have to be careful what I say about my particular businesses. But we continue to engage all our members, and the banking sector recognizes that this was a burden. We also certainly do not want to underestimate that there is a need for transition. But we certainly expect, and the whole community, the Gambian public actually would expect that interest rates should also plummet downwards.
Yeah. Now, we spoke about the bit regarding access to finance and the competitiveness index ranking of the Gambia. Let me bring in Senegal, and we look at that economy, where the ranking is about 106. I'm not sure if they have improved below that, or it is still at that level, because I've not had a chance to look at the current ranking.
Sure.
But 106, 117, if we should take the last ranking of the Gambia, the gap, is quite substantial. The question I want to ask is, with you being the CEO at the Chamber of Commerce, and also sitting in, relatively formidable and relevant parastatal boards in this country, and also private as well. What is it you think Senegal is doing right that we are not doing in terms of those parameters that inform the competitiveness index ranking, be it access to finance, be it taxation, be it high tariffs on energy, be it on bureaucratic red tape? What do you reckon we need to do as a country?
Actually, I think your description has hit it on the head. We can do a lot better. We do not want to accept that the average rates in the region is anything between 100 to 150.
Mm-hmm.
I think we can do better. And I can also tell you that we have recently formed a task force at the Chamber to specifically look at how we can improve our rankings of doing business and competitiveness in the Gambia.
Mm-hmm.
And here we've solicited and got the support of key businesses that have committed to playing a role to ensure that we take on both the public sector and the private sector challenges,
mm-hmm.
including whether it's the issue of permits, the issue of licenses, taxes, just getting things done, that we can all do better. When it comes to where Senegal is and where we are, it's nice to compare with Senegal, but with all due respect, Senegal is many times the size of Gambia in every respect, in terms of economy, in terms of its GDP, its reserves, its linkages to the French banking sector, its, should we say, democracy over the years, its governance issues. So we have a long way to go to catch up with Senegal. But we have to start block by block. And the fact that now we have transparent and good governance means that we're working in that direction. We've seen a reduction of corporate and personal income tax recently is also positive. We also continue to see that PPP, public-private partnership, is being talked about by this government more and more. Mm-hmm. And here I should mention Senegal has a thriving PPP system. Mm-hmm. They have many projects today that have changed their landscape thanks to public-private partnership. So I think that's, should I say, a low-hanging fruit that the Gambia should seize upon. We also want to note that, yes, there is a PPP unit at the Ministry of Finance. So we have been engaging them more and more. We hope we will do more and more, and that the government will also come on board. So once we start to tackle some of these issues, I think we are on the right direction. But notwithstanding, I think it's not going to happen overnight. But I can assure you that in the next 12 to 18 months, the Gambia Chamber of Commerce is determined that we actually save 20 points on doing business and our competitiveness.
Now, you touched on the point of public-private partnership, and here I want to expand a little bit on that point, because you're right. Low-hanging fruits that could be leveraged, which we have not done. I know the decision for the public-private partnership unit to reside within the ambit of finance was undertaken during the previous administration. But I, for one, have been an advocate that that was the wrong thing to do in the first place, and this goes, as far back as my days in Gaipa. Now, the fact that the PPP unit resides in finance, at the Ministry of Finance, under the new dispensation, should that continue to be the case? Because that is not where the PPP unit should be. If we want public-private partnership to flourish and to bring about the relevant economic development opportunities that we endeavor for, I think that unit has to come outside of finance. Is this an advocacy that, does the GCCI see it in that way? Is this an advocacy that maybe perhaps you, willing to lead? I had on this episode two members of the National Assembly, and the same sentiments that you're echoing in terms of public-private partnership are the same sentiments they have echoed, not in terms of where the PPP unit resides, but the opportunities and the low-hanging fruits that could be harnessed. But for that to happen, the quantum of funding that resides outside, whether it's at the level of AU, whether it's at ECOWAS, whether it's the international business community, they want to have that comfort and that confidence that whatever PPP framework it is that they're willing to partner in, they want to see it in the private sector and not in government. So what is it that you think the Chamber of Commerce could do to help bring about that dialogue?
You're right. There are many jurisdictions where the PPP units are actually placed outside finance or even outside government and as autonomous agencies. Well, the Gambia government, in its previous wisdom, resided it at the Ministry of Finance. So I think we can continue to engage to see if that is the best place to be located. But I think most importantly, it's the efficiency and how, should we say, effective the unit is. That is paramount. We have worked with the unit over the last few years. In fact, during its maiden days, we were the ones that hosted the policy dialogue on PPP. So we continue to have good relations and we collaborate substantially on projects. One of them, which is eminent, is a capital market formation, which again the PPP unit is championing through the with the Central Bank of the Gambia, as well as the private sector and the GCCI. We do not always agree on the speed of work because, of course, from the private sector point of view, we want things done yesterday rather than tomorrow. But we continue to work and continue to collaborate, and hopefully we can see that there is a common good, both public and private sector, and that we will take on these challenges commonly as well. So let's see how, and with the new dispensation now we have, how this can operate. But perhaps, if you allow me, I would also like to mention, as part of this dialogue and continuous engagement that we have with the government, about 4 weeks ago, the Gambia government inaugurated the National Business Council, which is again a PPP format, comprised of 8 members of the business community and 5 cabinet ministers, to be chaired by the president himself personally, at least twice a year. So we will continue to use all the fora that we have to ensure that the PPP that we talk about is not only theory, but we also walk the game.
Let me play devil's advocate, as I'm fond of doing on this program. Whilst the formation of the Business Council and the level at which it is, with the President chairing it, I think that in itself is a laudable initiative and a very important one. But we have also heard from some quarters that it is overwhelmed by government personalities. And I mean, I'm just telling you, giving you feedback in terms of what I've heard vis-a-vis critics, that perhaps, you know, it could have been comprised more, you know, of members from the private sector and people who are formidable as long as private enterprise is concerned. What is your response to that?
No, I think there is some misinformation. I can confirm that 8 members of the council are private sector, whilst it's only 5 cabinet ministers plus the president, which are public sector. So there is a majority of the private sector. I can also confirm that it's top leaders of the private sector that have been identified and appointed. I can also confirm that the council is appointed for a 3-year term, renewable only once, so the members of the private sector can only serve maximum 6 years in the council, and it's a permanent council for now. But moreover, as long as we continue to engage, and particularly, and I think this is fundamental, with the highest representation, including that of the presidency, I think this opens a unique opportunity for the public and private sector to confront common challenges, but also to see the Gambia as a national product. So that we're very proud that the Chamber of Commerce has been able to celebrate. Of course, having worked intensively with Gambia Investment and Export Promotion Agency and the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Employment particularly.
Excellent. I think we'll have to commend you on that. Maybe some people are just complaining because they are not part of the parcel. You know,
I would have loved to have every formidable businessman to be part of the council, but unfortunately there is a limit. But there is time for everybody.
But exactly,
yeah.
The fact that it's rotational,
yes,
you know, that in itself, I mean, makes it a plus. Now, let's come to the chamber. I know you mentioned earlier from the points that you've made that the Chamber of Commerce has signed an MOU with the Kaulak Chamber of Commerce. I mean, it is, you know, customary, actually, common practice for chambers of commerce over time to expand their footprint, you know, around the globe. for obvious strategic reasons, whether it's business development, business expansion, seeking for, expansion markets in terms of exports. Outside of Senegal, could you deliberate on some of the other countries that you have engaged in terms of widening your scope, expanding your footprint?
Oh, indeed. We continue to work with countries all over the world, particularly because the Gambia is also a trading country. We do not manufacture. Manufacturing in our industry is less than 15–16%. So the bulk of our GDP is in services and trade. The bulk of these countries are the ones that we continue to work with, and this includes China, where we've signed an MOU with the private sector Chamber of Commerce, Turkey. Recently, during the last state visit of President Barrow in Turkey, we signed an MOU with the Istanbul Chamber of Commerce and Industry, as well as Antalya Chamber of Commerce and Industry. We also have a similar MOU with the Confederation of Indian Industry in India. There are many more. Qatar is one that also was signed under the last presidency, and this is presently being reviewed as well. So the MOUs really follow the bilateral and diplomatic relations particularly, because they offer tremendous opportunities whilst we develop and harness the personal relations between the presidencies as well as the governments, that we also promote trade. So we continue to look at opportunities all over. Recently also we signed with Abuja Chamber of Commerce and Industry, because we also feel that we need to trade more and more in Africa. Again, ECOWAS allows us huge opportunities, and currently less than 12% has been traded amongst ourselves. We need to grow this when the rest of the world is doing up to 60%, for example, in Europe. So I think we can do a lot more amongst ourselves.
Now, you spoke about manufacturing and how the country is more of a trading economy than it is a manufacturing economy. I hosted here the president of the Association of Gambian Manufacturers. And one of the issues that we discussed was the challenges that confronts the manufacturing sector.
Yeah.
Now, and those challenges I have alluded to earlier in terms of the competitiveness index, ranking. Now, you are the voice of business. And I made this point as well to the bankers when I hosted them on this program. If we look at the economy of the Gambia, services has been doing tremendously well. The various service areas, be it banking, be it trading,
tourism.
you name it, tourism, But the one area that seems to be confronted with a challenge since independence has been manufacturing. And manufacturing, we know, in terms of employment creation, provides the biggest opportunity, because agriculture could have, but agriculture needs to be mechanized and automated in terms of processing, which is what Senegal is trying to do. Cottage industries, you mentioned about the issue vis-a-vis cashew and how the Senegalese are now trying to have their cashews processed within. The question is, what is it that we can do as a country, practically, to help bring about a change in the performance of the manufacturing sector? I mean, you look at our current account, it's been negative since independence. What is it that we can do? I know electricity is a challenge, key challenge, to manufacturing. But what is it, in terms of programs and projects that we need to do to help bring about a reversal in the performance of manufacturing?
I think there are a number of things we can do. But unless we resolve and overcome the challenge of energy, it will be an effortless task.
But give and take, this would happen in the next 3–5 years.
Well, we've had energy come and energy go. I like to believe that we are on the route now to permanent solutions. But until we do that, it is a challenge. And so whether it's the next 6 months or the next 3 years, that is fundamental in ensuring that our businesses thrive. And it's not only manufacturing. I remember in the hotel business, we used to joke that we were plant managers with some rooms attached, because the single biggest cost in all sectors, particularly in tourism, was energy. So, you know, it's one that cuts across all industries. Having said that, we can move to other areas, availability and cost of raw materials, because also the Gambia is not endowed with a lot of local resources. So we continue to bring in a lot of imports and ingredients that we need to process and manufacture. But you know, we have a great opportunity in agribusiness, which we produce locally, which we can also develop and ensure that we are self-sufficient, both in whether it's in fruits consumption or rice cultivation, like Senegal has recently done. So we need to see what are those challenges specific to those, should we say, industries. Let's talk about rice production. Agriculture-based, but also with a hint of industry. We need to make sure that we actually have irrigation. Irrigation means technology which is not available, but which we can actually get like everywhere else have got. So it's a matter of tackling and looking at the core industries and what needs to be done. Oh, let's look at the plastic industry. We use and consume a lot of plastic in the Gambia, whether it's in our pipes or whether it's our soap production, in our building, etc. But then where is that going to come from? So that means we must make these imports much more affordable and make sure that also they're available all the time. Let's talk about whether it's in the drinks manufacturing. Maybe here we should use more local produce. Maybe do away with other things that are foreign. So I think also we can look inwards to see how and what can be done.
Now let me come in there and ask this question. You mentioned earlier how the new government have helped in trying to bring taxes down, both the corporate tax and the personal income tax. Now, manufacturing, given its relevance and given what it can help the country realize, if we're able to export, the effects that would come in, the jobs that would be created, which naturally would culminate into people voting the government into subsequent terms. What is it, I mean, as CEO and Chamber of Commerce, that you could advocate to government? I mean, could there be a discussion in terms of taxes for the tax rate, I mean, that is levied on manufacturing to be perhaps a little bit lower so that, you know, they could begin to realize the dividends within that sector?
Oh, that certainly is an area that we've engaged the government for the longest time. We continue to bring them all these challenges. And that's why, again, at the Chamber, we're expanding our professional team, because we are engaging more and more staff in perhaps research so that we can actually do evidence-based advocacy. So that we can, when we go to government, not only that we rely on GBOS, the Gambia Bureau of Statistics information, that we also use industry-based information to say that these are the benefits and these are the comparatives of having to do it differently that it will bring to the Gambia. So we have engaged the government, and one of the things that, again, we recognize, even under the previous regime, it's like as an alternative to the huge energy crisis, tax on renewable energy was eliminated because on equipment to provide an alternative source of energy. So I think that's the same line that we must pursue again so that we can promote and expand our manufacturing businesses. But let me also make a quick point here. Manufacturing growth is actually beneficial not only for export, but particularly for local consumption. Because as you already pointed out, we will save on purchasing and sending out foreign exchange, because we can pay with local currency when we produce locally and buy locally. So I think the benefits of really a thriving economy are huge, and we all have a role in that regard.
Mr. Saka, this is where we would draw the curtains. It's been a pleasure to have you on the Business and Economy program. I wish you the very best. And also, I forgot, but congratulations on your appointment as the Honorary Consul of Indonesia in the Gambia.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.